Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about 5 worst champions of 2019. So I was thinking for a while how exactly I am going to approach this whole ranking stuff and scenario, and because everybody's releasing basically their lists of 2019 and I didn't want to make one massively long video. I didn't also want to leave too many things out, so this is a format that I settled for. Basically I'm going to be revealing these champs 5 by 5, so that will give me somewhat adequate and reasonable time to actually discuss these champions, what I think went right, what I think went wrong, what they are missing, or why they are so fantastic. At the same time, I'm not going to be keeping you guys here for solid 40 minutes to an hour and just kind of forcing you to watch one really long video. And besides, that will give me an easy time figuring out what videos I'm going to upload for a few days. So there is that bonus, let's not ignore it. So basically we have 25 champions come out this year. There are going to be 5 videos where I'm going to be starting off with spot 21 to 25, and then we're going to go gradually up and up and up. So you could say that this video is all about the losers, the nobodies, the oh my god, not this guy again kind of champions of 2019. So first things first, we're going to kick off with a Mystic class. Not much to a surprise, and by far the worst champion in 2019 has been Ebony Maw. And it's actually fairly kind of like sad and unfortunate thing, because not only he was a relatively hyped champion by the time he was get added to the contest because of how impressively he had displayed himself in Infinity War, besting Doctor Strange. He looked menacing, he looked kind of scary and creepy, and he had pretty much everything going for him. And initially, even after reading his abilities, you couldn't really tell how much of a noodle he's going to turn out to be. Now, when it comes to this champion's ability set, not looking at the lack of immunities, not looking at kind of like relatively alright skill set, you can definitely tell that there is something wrong with this guy. And what's the thing that is wrong with this guy is he hits like a 7-year-old schoolgirl. And honestly, I do not know what kind of substance was the person who figured out the attack numbers for this guy was on at the day he pushed those numbers through, but I think it's in everybody's best interest that whoever actually came up with the numbers for Ebony Maw stays off whatever he was on that day, or ultimately just stays away from designing champions altogether, because it's pathetic, man. He is getting out damaged by champions that are several ranks below him, and it's actually that tragic that at the state where if you could double this guy's damage output, he would still be somewhere in the middle towards the bottom of the list, because he's just kind of meh. Like, when it comes to dealing with anything and everything, Mystic-based buffs, nullification, power control, there are far better options. And yeah, even if this guy could actually remove those pillows from his hands and throw a decent punch, he wouldn't be special. That's just the sad reality of it. There's nothing too intriguing about the guy. He has some decent power control. Heavy attacks are cool. The whole projectile attack thing and all that. All of those could have been useful things should they have been wrapped together somewhat better. Alas, they were not. And we have this little turd, Squidward, who does absolutely nothing aside from bring misery to the people who happen to pull or dupe him. Yay for a dupe 6-star. Anyways, that pretty much will do for our worst of the worst scumbag of 2019. And that means we can move to the silver medalist. That's right, this guy got so drunk he couldn't even manage to be the worst. He came in close. And that is obviously everybody's favorite alcoholic, Diablo. Now, aside from looking like a Snoop Dogg going for Halloween, this guy also is just designed extremely bizarrely. And that's, I think, part of the reason why so many people like draw parallels of this guy looking like a Snoop Dogg. Well, obviously there is the whole getting himself drugged up and constantly consuming some sort of liquids that do seem to be making him inebriated, but the whole misdesign of him also seems like somebody who was actually on the same drugs designed this guy, because he has one of the most kind of puzzling and baffling design features in the game at all altogether, and he's pretty much the only champion in a game that eventually will just pretty much stop working. We have typically seen aspects that are completely reverse. We have seen champions that kind of need these kind of amp ups, or they need missions, they need charges, they need combo meters, and they kind of get stronger and stronger as you go throughout the quest or the longer you are in the fight. Then this guy is complete opposite of it, and should you happen to have somewhat medium level quest, he just quits, basically. He goes on strike, he runs out of potions, and when there is no boost left, there is no more party left in this guy either, and that means he will just do nothing. And the sad thing is, even when he's fully potioned up, assuming that it is first fight of the quest, there is absolutely nothing that this guy does better than any other Mystic champion in the class. He has obviously some redeeming qualities. He can be somewhat decent with suicide masteries, and assuming that you literally have no other decent Mystic champions, this guy can actually deal with some resistor nodes or some stuff like that. But again, you can only use that for a couple of fights, and again, there are champions in the game who can do it much easier, much more consistently, much less confusing ability descriptions, and can do it for entire quest. So this guy is a huge flop. Not only he is average by ability design, and also the fact that his abilities can just stop working a couple fights in a quest. No thank you. Another worthless addition to the Mystic class, and it kind of is actually sad that Kabam, aside from not releasing any Mystics for a year, pretty much started off this year with releasing 2 of the most garbage champions we have seen in a long time. So that was definitely surprising, and at that point I already started to think that Mystic class is doomed to be shite forever. However, since we are moving on over this guy, and it's not like we can constantly pick on Mystic champions only, we are going to be looking at the third worst champion, so the bronze medalist of Ultimate Scrub Games, and that would be Annihilus. Now, this guy is a bane in the bottom for many people when you're placing it on defense. However, when you're actually using it, he just doesn't really have all that much going on, and now he is miles better, and it's hard to be as horrible as Ebony Maw and as Diablo, and that will kind of show how actually relatively alright and decent these year's champions have been, because obviously as the years go by, the Kabam has more options, they can program champions more interesting, and that obviously does also invite a lot of jokes how current champion abilities are like an actual manual or encyclopedia compared to one-liner jokes when it comes to reading Storm's abilities. But alas, Annihilus doesn't really piece it all together to a degree where we would be happy to use him ourselves actually questing. And if there is anything this champion represents, that it is a pain in the ass, difficult fight whenever you are questing, and not the other way around. And that is the reason why he is so low on this list, because he's also extremely one-dimensional. Now, if you do know how to fight Annihilus, fair enough, but he is one of the more annoying opponents to face, A, if you're not prepared, or B, if you're just maybe not quite as good as intercepting or sidestepping or know what's gonna happen. But his animations, plus the unstoppable abilities, plus the stifles, plus everything else, basically make this guy a bit of a nightmare, and he's definitely hated by many people, and many people are always struggling with him. However, when it comes to actually using the guy, he does a bunch of stuff, places debuffs, places stifles, places armor breaks, gains some furies, but it seems that none of them really do all that much. Now, yes, he can throw a decent punch in ideal conditions where you have stacked up some stifles, because you can get your power gain rate increased, and then it means you can get a decent chunk of furies and you can do some damage, but that damage isn't even impressive after a huge work up to it. So yeah, he is, unfortunately, when you are actually offensively using this champion, one of the biggest failures. And I believe he's also up for a rework, so hopefully they can jig the numbers a bit, maybe increase the duration of some debuffs, maybe increase the potency of something else, and actually make this guy worthwhile. Because currently the only people who actually, in fact, have ranked this guy up are the sadistic bastards who do it for Alliance War defense. Love you guys. And that will basically mean that we can move on to the spot number 4. So this guy is slightly better, but it's still a sadistic bastard champion because, once again, nobody really wants to play the guy and everybody hates to play against this guy. Now, this might not be as clear-cut of a case because I have heard more people actually saying that they enjoy this champion or asking actually me to do a review of this champion, but I have not been able to force myself to love this guy because the playstyle of him just seems so awkward and quirky, where you hold your heavy attacks and then the debuffs get paused, and his whole signature ability Shindig, where you gain pre-fight charge abilities that increase your attack or regeneration rate and things like that, are just too kind of uncontrollable and, dare I say, insignificant. At least with Corvus, you know what you're going for and you know what you're looking for in a fight. When you're gonna face a mutant champion, it's gonna give you charge, it's gonna make you hit harder. With this guy, you technically kind of get something every fight he wins, but then again, it's dependent on the class, so you don't really know how he's going to look like by the end of it. Plus, those bonuses aren't really kind of worth the effort to try and struggle through the harder fights. And aside from that, offensively, he really also, not that he can't hit at all, but he definitely is not the hardest hitting champion. He does have some unique abilities, like being able to block unblockable attacks, but at the same time, he's just too blasé, kind of all over the place. It's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. There are some quirky utilities this guy has. Unfortunately, there is no real need for whatever this guy does in the endgame scenario. At least I haven't seen particularly many situations where I would go like, oh, I wish my Mr. Sinister was ranked up. But one thing is again clear, that he overall has come out as fairly one-dimensional champion for defense, as somebody that is gonna trap your Corvus, somebody that is annoying to fight off against, somebody who is gonna regen a lot, that you will want to try and actually heal block them, plus the fact that he can throw damage over time debuffs back at you with his level 1s makes him all the more frustrating. And he is one of the champions that people hate to fight against. So people love to hate this guy. And that kind of, in my opinion, makes him a bit of a fail. So he's Medicore on offense and just a nightmare to deal with on defense. And yeah, I love to hate this guy. Everybody likes to hate this guy. And Caban did him no favors by placing him as boss on 6.22 with Caustic Temper, EMP modification, Backblast, happy days. And lastly, we're going to talk about the champion that I actually do not have. This is like the one of the few champions in the game that I do not have, and I think she and Silver Surfer is actually the two champions this year that I haven't managed to acquire in any form or shape so far. So it's Elsa Bloodstone. Now, Elsa Bloodstone is, in my opinion, better option, better champion than all of the four mentioned. Hence, she is kind of like the winner of the losers, technically, kind of, or the worst of the losers. I mean, either way, she is not as bad as the first four champions in the video, and the fact is, she just does nothing in particular that anybody would care about, and that is kind of disappointing because she can be slightly annoying on defense, especially if she is placed with suicides and interaction with that whole heal prevention thing, and when you degenerate for long as she's bleeding. But then again, we can see who we're facing, so we know either to bring in a mutant champion or I don't know, man. And there is nothing that particularly you can expect. She's kind of like a vanilla champion, if that makes sense. A champion that fits well in descriptions of hit opponent, don't get hit, and if there are no special nodes in the fight, you will eventually kind of win. Like, she has one useful thing that she can technically parry stun immune opponents, but aside from that, she was and actually seemingly were intended to be this kind of like burst damage champion where you kind of like stock up your bullets, use them, stay aggressive, get a bunch of cruelties, get a bunch of debuffs on opponent. And you do all that, and then you look at the opponent and see, like, is that it? Is that all the damage this guy's gonna take? Because, yeah, I mean, it's a fairly interesting concept, and I did enjoy the theory of it, but when it comes down to actually using the character in endgame scenarios, where you can't often control how frequently opponents are going to throw special attacks, therefore you can't control how aggressive you can be in the fight, or where your bullet situation is going to be, and even if everything goes perfect, nothing really happens. So she's kind of like much worse version, let's say, of Proxim Midnight. Proxim Midnight, after you do all of the things that Kabam devs intended you to do, you can actually see a massive output, like an overkill of damage. And here, when you do stock up, load up, do everything in like correct sequence, you do all that and nothing much changes. Yes, you do some decent damage, but at the same time there are champions who could have just walked in the fight and done the same damage with no hassle, kind of thing. Now, the fact that Cold Snap or Frostbite or whatever she places on opponent does prevent evades is kind of cool, so that's additional hidden kind of utility. But then again, we have so many better champions who can deal with evade, and unfortunately this little Red Riding Hood just doesn't have anything that sets her apart from the bunch. So she is still in my personal bottom 5. Now, I completely agree that these are just my opinions. I might change them as the time goes on, or as whether I have a hardy discussion with somebody and they completely tell me they have misunderstood the point of the champions. But as it stands right now, Elsa Bloodstone still is a huge failure in my opinion in 2019, and that pretty much finishes today's video. 5 worst champions of 2019. Tomorrow we're going to be back again with another episode where we are going to be looking for champions number 16 to 20. So these are going to be champions who are not great, but are not absolutely horrible and might actually fit some sort of role or purpose in your rosters. But that being said, let me know what you guys think. Who are your 5 worst champions of 2019? But that will pretty much do for today, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya.